All right, welcome everyone. My name is Coach David. I will be your guide on this financial aid journey. As we go through this presentation today, I'm hoping to impart a little bit of kind of knowledge on you guys. I'm also going to talk about some of the things that are happening in the world today because they do affect financial aid as well. Okay, so it is February 12th at 5 p.m., right? Some of you guys might be actually here because you are wanting to join the interview kind of training. That one starts at 6 o'clock. Okay. So if you did get a text message about that, it will be at starting at 6 o'clock. So just, you can use that same link and come back later on. Okay. But for today, right, we're going to be talking about financial aid, right? What's going on, how it's going to affect your student. We're also going to talk about the basics of financial aid, and we're just going to focus on one part. Okay. So let's jump straight into it, right? If you guys can help me by putting your child's grade in the chat, that would be super, super helpful. So let's get rolling here. Okay. So first thing, right? What are we going to be talking about today, right? So we're going to talk about financial aid news, right? It's something that I do every single week. We're also going to talk about how does the system keep families out and what is financial aid and where are you going to get it, right? If you are kind of one of our coaching families in our college coaching programs, right? Uh, Obviously, this recording will be available to you on our private YouTube channel, right? If you're from our Facebook, right, we are going to make a post in the kind of Facebook groups, and then you can get the information there, right? The recording takes about 24 to 48 hours to kind of render and for us to edit a little bit, but it should be up there in about 24 to 48 hours, right? So just look out for those posts there, okay? So most of you guys know me, right? I am, Coach David, right? I used to be a former college and law school admission reader. I am a former lawyer, right? And I am also the financial aid master here at Eagle Lock, right? And so I want to help your families save money too. All right, so just really quick, right? If you're a class of 2026, right? I do see that there are some 11th graders here, right? It is time to prepare now, right? So I will have a link to book a consultation with me, right? Our consultations are free, right? I'll also have a QR code and I also have a phone number for you to text. So there's three different ways that you can reach out to us, right? And so here's my fair warning, right? There's no reason for you not to sign up for a consultation. It's free. I'll tell you if I can help or not. Okay. So let's jump into kind of financial aid breaking news, right? So last week we talked about how there was a pause on kind of Department of Education funding. We also talked about how it wasn't going to affect individual students, right? Now things have changed. More things are happening, right? One of the things that happened was, the Department of Government Efficiency, right? Elon Musk runs that. It is a quasi-governmental institution, right? Organization, right? So it's kind of part of the government, it's kind of not part of the government. But as far as we have seen, what the kind of Department of Government Efficiency has done is that they canceled 89 contracts with research institutions. That's $881 million, right? They also, right, for a lot of families out there, you have heard that, the government is also cutting DEI training, right? So that's diversity and, equity and inclusion, right? That's over $100 million. In total, that's $982 million that is being cut from college campuses, almost $1 billion, right? So it is something that is affecting college campuses, right? What else, right? Now, there is a kind of institute at the U.S. Department of Education, right, called the Institute of Education Sciences, that is an independent research arm that kind of, looks at different data from different school districts and helps local kind of educational organizations figure out how they're going to spend their money, figure out how they need to kind of like focus their students, so on and so forth, right? It has basically been shut down, right? I have families that are close to DC in Virginia or actually in DC, right? And they've told me about, if they have, acquaintances or people that, are in the U.S. Department of Education and what's been happening there, right? Now, just because we do have a lot of families that are in California, right? Um, I just want you guys to know what's going on with the UCs, right? So the UC Students Association actually sued the Department of Education last Friday. Okay, they sued them. It is a class action lawsuit of all the students, right? Or the UC Students Association on behalf of all the students at the UCs, right, has sued the Department of Education, right? Because the Department of Government Efficiency has access to the financial aid database, right? If, kind of like what they're planning is going to happen, right? So they're arguing that it is a violation of the Federal Privacy Act and Internal Revenue Code, right? Now, the UC Student Association is the first one to sue, right? But I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot more student groups that are suing because there are over 40 million students that have their financial information in the federal system, right? As part of FAFSA or other kind of documents that have been turned in. They have access to your name, your address, your social security number, your date of birth, personal information, right? And so it is scary because the DOGE is not really a government organization. So what kind of protections are there going to be for people's information, right? It is a super long list of people. Parents, you still might have student loans, right? This is going to affect you as well, right? So, again, there's a lot of things going on in the world, right? Now, one of the things, right, that I want families to understand is that federal funding from the US Department of Education, right, and different arms of the government is part of most colleges' budgets every year, right? So just the UCs alone, they receive $12 billion in federal funding annually. Now, what that includes is research funding, right? Student financial aid, including Pell Grants, right? The kind of like SEOG grants, the Supplement Educational Opportunity Grants, and federal work study. These are all programs that are possible because the UCs receive that money, right? So, so again, the ramifications of this happening, I'm not sure, right? I'm not sure what California is going to do. I'm not sure what Texas is going to do. I'm not sure what New Jersey is going to do, right? But, right, we're going to have to kind of wait and see. And again, I will try to provide you the most up-to-date information that I can, right? Now, there's also something happening with other programs, right? There have been cuts in the diversity, equity and inclusion programs and funding, right? Some groups that are going to be affected by this are students from African American backgrounds, Native Americans and Alaskan Natives, and Hispanic groups. Okay, these are groups that are considered, underrepresented in secondary education, right? And so, with these types of program cuts, there's going to be a lot of students that don't have the opportunity where before they might have. Okay. So if you're worried about your student in any of these situations, again, give us a call, right? Set up a consultation so we can talk and see how it will affect you. But generally speaking, right, it will affect the student on a individual level if they're part of a school and part of a program where one of the maybe key elements of what they're doing is a federal, kind of federally funded research, right? Or maybe they're getting the Pell Grant or they're getting this or that. But from what I've heard, those grants, right, and those kind of like different kind of financial aid options, loans, work study, those things aren't necessarily going to disappear, but they might be transferred to a different kind of department in the government. Okay. So these are just some of the things that are happening, right? Now, again, I'm probably the one that is most invested in this issue because it affects all of the families that I work with, right? So I will make sure to bring you guys the most up-to-date information. Again, if there's any questions about anything, I've had a lot of parents reach out that are in our program or that are thinking about joining our program, asking about this question and that question. Again, I try to reassure every family that, things are going to be okay, but, at the end of the day, I don't have enough information yet. Once I do, and once I know exactly what's going to happen, I will try to give you guys more information. Okay. Now, let us kind of get into financial aid, right? Because until they say that financial aid is disbanded, I'm going to try to save you guys as much money as possible. Okay. So I say this all the time, right? But if you are kind of like one of those kind of, 1% of one percenters that, has a daily driver Ferrari or Lamborghini, you probably don't need me, right? But for those families that it's like, oh man, thinking about paying for college is a little bit scary, right? And even if you feel like you're a higher income individual, you feel like, oh gosh, that's a huge expense for our family, right? This is probably something that you do need to know. Okay. So before I get into the training for today, I did want to kind of make sure that, we help you guys to get to college as well as also pay for college, right? So for those of you that don't know, we have changed our name. Our name, right? We are formerly known as College Admission Secrets. Now we are known as Eagle Lock, right? Now you might be thinking, what the heck? What does Eagle Lock mean, right? But if you actually look at our new name, right, it's actually college spelled backwards. Okay. We want to help families crack the code to getting into college as well as paying for it. Okay. So, with Eagle Lock and Financial Aid Secrets, right? I want to introduce you guys to our college application intensive, right? So, our college application intensive is going to be broken up into two parts. There is a 1 day kickstart, right, which will help our students get to a rough draft phase and really kind of like, flesh out their ideas, right? And then we have the accelerator, which is more of a small group session where students and coaches will be working together to try to get to a final draft by the end of the weekend. Okay. Each of these events is our full day events, right? The kickstart is 1 day, full day, 9 to 4 p.m., right? The accelerator is Saturday, Sunday, 9 to 4 p.m. Okay. We do have virtual and in-person options available, right? So if you are interested, you can go to our website. It is collegeappintensive.com, right? I will also have a text or like a number that you can text later if you're interested in getting more information. Okay. So let's start talking about the financial aid process and step number one. Okay. Now, this is going to be a multi-week presentation. Now, I don't want to bore you by going through like 5 weeks of what you need to do for kind of like the financial aid process. So it'll be weaved throughout multiple weeks, but this is just part one. Okay. So the first question that we need to answer is, what is financial aid? Okay. Now, financial aid, just generally speaking, right? A Google definition, I guess you could say, is money given to a student and families in order to make college more affordable. That sounds really good, right? Now, there's a lot of different names to things, right? One, right, they might call it a grant or a scholarship or work study or institutional aid, departmental aid, loans. But all of these things together, right, are considered financial aid, right? So people that say, oh, loans aren't financial aid, no. For the purposes of what financial aid means, yes, they are considered financial aid. Okay. Now, for me, to make it easy for families to understand the situation, I break it into two different pots of money. On the left side, I think you guys are seeing it as well. On the left, right, that free money is money that never needs to be paid back, right? So no one can come after you to say, hey, I have a bill for you to pay. Okay. It's free money that you will never need to pay back. And then you have loans, right? Hence the invoice and you paying back money. Okay. Those are the only two types of money I see. I see free money, I see loans. That's it. For future reference, that's the only way I'm going to talk about money. A lot of people use the word scholarship. A lot of people use the word grant. A lot of people use the word this and that. But it gets very convoluted because I'm not sure what people are talking about when they use those terms. So if you guys are going to ask a question, just talk about free money, talk about loans. Okay. All right. So again, that's just kind of what I said. So it's just a reiteration of what I said. But again, remember, one pot of money, free money, one pot of money, loans. That's it. Okay. Now, this is the first step in this whole process. Okay. Now, the first step is to do FAFSA. Now, FAFSA is the free application for student aid. A lot of families might have heard of this term before, right? Now, for 2025, and I'm like praying that it's not the case for kind of class of 2026, but for the class of 2025, the open date was December 1st. That's 2 months after it's originally supposed to be open, right? For the class of 2024, it was delayed almost 3 months, right? The opening date, right? And that caused a huge confusion, right? For the class of 2026, I do hope that it is a normal open date, but I am not 100% sure yet, right? They always say that they're working on something or that they're doing something to the website. I don't see the website getting better and it's more glitchy than ever, so I'm not really sure what they're working on, right? But the website that you want to be on is studentaid.gov. Okay. That is the website that you need, right? The reason why I say this is because if you type FAFSA into Google or whatever search engine that you're using, there are a lot of different things that come up. And some of them are just kind of like either scams, right? or they're just trying to get your personal information, right? So make sure that you're on the studentaid.gov website, okay? So I told everyone about the possible scams out there, okay? Now, what do you need to fill this out, right? First off, you need your appropriate year tax return. Now, when I say the appropriate year, right? If you're a class of 2025, right? And I see some of our families that are in our 2025, so thank you for coming to support, right? Uh, then you turned into me your 2023 tax return. That's the information that we're using, right? So if you look, 20 class of 2025, 23, right? Class of 2026, and then we need your 2024 tax return, right? So that's something that we need. We need your social security number, and we need the right social security number. And you might be thinking, what are you talking about? I know my social security number. Now, for adults, that might be the case, but, and you also might have memorized your students as well. But, right? And I keep saying but because I've been in these situations before, right? I've actually had parents that have kind of memorized their student's social security number for the last 17 or 18 years. And the only way we figure that out is by trying to kind of create a FAFSA account and not being able to because the social security number that you put on your tax returns when you put your children on as dependents, right? That you've used at school, that you've done this for and that for, you've been using the wrong social for the last 18 years, right? Now you might say, how is that possible? It's very possible because they're not checking the social security numbers of your children, right? They're just checking the social security numbers of the people that are paying taxes, which is usually the parents, right? So keep that in mind there, right? You also need an email that you regularly check, right? And the reason why I say it's one that you regularly check is because I want it to be one where you're checking, the inbox, you're checking the spam box, you're checking the social box, you're checking the promotions box because you don't know what types of emails are going to be coming to you, right? Now, you do need to have a distinct email. You cannot use the same email to create like, oh, the David, college family email account, right? So it's davidcollege@gmail.com. You cannot create that and try to use that for everyone's email because the FAFSA will require that you have a distinct email for each account, right? So you will need to have one parent account and you will need to have one student account. That means you need to have two separate emails. Okay. The same thing goes with phone numbers. You need to have distinct phone numbers, right? Now, student one, right? You'll have to have one for the student, you will have to have one for the parent. Now, I've run into this issue a lot this year, right? I've actually run into an issue where it says, we put in the student's phone number and it says you already have an account, right? But when we try to kind of like answer questions or use their birthday to reset their password, it's impossible. And do you know why? Because someone else had that phone number a long time ago. When they changed their phone number, they did not change their phone number on the FAFSA account. So that phone number will no longer be viable to be used for the purposes of the FAFSA form. Okay. So if you have a phone number that you've used for a significant amount of time, keep that phone number. Do not change it, right? Because if you change it, there's a likelihood you're going to get a recycled number, right? We're running out of phone numbers. Okay. So make sure that if you have had a phone number for a long time, let's try to keep it so that it is more likely that it is a phone number that hasn't been recycled to you and someone else might have created an account. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the form. Okay. Now, the form itself is seems like it's pretty simple, right? And I'm going to run you through the student side of things, right? I will eventually also go through the parent side of things as well, right? But the reason why I want to go through the student side is to show that this is the level that they're asking from the student. The parent is probably twice, probably about 2.5 times as long. And then later things that we'll talk about, including the CSS profile, IDoc, other additional forms that need to be filled out. Those additional things are kind of like, 5 times, 10 times as much information as was on the FAFSA. Okay. But let's really quickly go through here and see what types of questions that they're asking. Okay. So the first thing they ask is like, who's filling it out, student or parent, right? Now, either the student or the parent can initiate kind of starting the form, right? It doesn't really matter, right? But obviously I tried it as a student here, right? They're going to ask when you were kind of like when you became a legal resident. If you were born in a certain state, right? I was born in California, right? Then you would put your month and year of birth, right? Now, one of the pieces that has changed is that you do have to provide consent so that your information, right, can be matched with the IRS, right? So they're going to match your birthday, the way you spell your name, and your social security number, right? If this doesn't happen, then you are not eligible for any type of federal aid, including loans. Okay. So this is one of those sections that does need to happen. Okay. Now, they'll also ask kind of like what year you are in school, right? Do you already have your bachelor's degree? They're also going to ask about your personal circumstances as far as like being a ward of the state or, being adopted, so on and so forth, right? They're also going to ask about homelessness, right? And again, you mark whatever, applies to you, right? They'll also ask about gender, right? Now, based on what the government is doing right now, right? I know that obviously in some of our families, they have students that don't identify as male or female, right? These these kind of additional categories, these might be a thing of the past, right? So it is something that we have to kind of deal with once it actually happens, but we'll see what happens with it. Okay. They also ask about race and ethnicity. Now, one of the questions I get a lot about kind of just the college applications in general, and also about financial aid is like, okay, well, does race play a factor, right? No, it does not, right? When you are being evaluated for your application, unless you tell them about your ethnic background or racial background, they don't know, right? And for the purposes of financial aid, they use this because they want to understand the demographic that is applying for financial aid, right? It's not used to determine whether you're going to get it or not. Okay. They're also going to ask about student citizenship status, right? Now, one of the other things that I have also read is that a lot of families are afraid of what's going to happen if they fill out this form. And let's say that, the parents are undocumented, right? Now this is the student, right? But once it gets to the parent side, they will ask a similar question, right? But the most important citizenship question is for the student. Okay. So obviously mark whatever kind of applies to you, right? If you are an eligible non-citizen, what that means is that you hold green card status, right? I have also talked to a lot of families that are in the process of getting their permanent residency in the United States, right? Now, technically speaking, right? Until you get your A number, right, which is an alien registration number, right, you are not eligible, right? Now, I have heard of families that have gone through, that are on advanced parole status, which means that you're basically, finalized, but and you can leave and come back to the country, right? But they don't have their A number necessarily. If that's the case, then unfortunately, the form asks for your A number, so it won't be complete. Okay. And then we also have students that might be in a situation where they are part of deferred action, right? If that's the case, then obviously the third button would be the one for you. Okay. They're also going to ask about your high school completion status, right? So they'll ask where you went to high school, what kind of diploma you got, or if you were homeschooled. Okay. Tax filing status, right? Now, if your student worked, it doesn't necessarily mean that they filed taxes, right? Because if they made under a certain threshold, they probably just filed with you. Okay. So if they did have their own tax return for something, right? Maybe they have something that, grandpa left, right? An investment account or this or that, and they do have to file their own taxes, then obviously you'll answer yes here. But if they are kind of like maybe had a part-time job and did this and that, then most likely it'll be under the parents. Okay. Now, this number in college, right? I don't even know why they ask it anymore because they don't really even give you a discount anymore, right? But they do still ask how many students are going to be in college for the next year. Okay. So if there are multiple students in college, go ahead and put it, right? Um, Another question that they also ask is like the number of dependents in the family, right? And that is on the parent side, right? And so I did talk about this kind of, I believe it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, but that is glitched too, right? So if you actually click on like, oh yeah, the number is different, you'll actually see that it actually if it's a married parent family, it actually defaults to three. But what if you have 7 children? Then it's actually a family of 9. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that section to make sure that you are not like that it is the actual correct number that it should be. Okay. The next thing that they're going to ask is how many, like, where are you applying to school? Right now, there are very few schools in the United States that do not accept the FAFSA. Okay. So if you search, you will most likely find it. The one thing that I will say as you're filling this out, the first thing, well, there's a couple things, right? The first thing is that you're only allowed to add 20 schools at a time. Now, you might be thinking, oh my God, 20 schools? That's a lot, right? My student's not even going to apply to 20 schools. Well, actually, they probably are, right? Because if they're applying to the UCs across the board, that's already nine, right? And then they apply to, let's say three, CSUs, that's already 12. And then maybe they apply to six, seven, eight private schools, right? That's already 20. Okay. So each school is individual. While the UCs are a system, the financial aid needs to be sent to each individual college. Okay. So keep that in mind there. The second thing that I want you to be very aware of is that there are colleges, when you type in, I'll just give you an example, like Columbia, right? When you type in Columbia, there's like six options you can choose from, and a lot of people get confused as to which one they're supposed to be using. Obviously, the first thing you should do is go to the financial aid website and see which one you should choose, right? But some people don't heed my warning and they just try to choose what they think is the right one, right? Oh, my kid's going to study medicine, so I'm going to click on Columbia, School of Medicine. That's not the right one, okay? And again, there's a lot of schools that have graduate schools, so you have to make sure that you're not clicking the graduate school instead of the undergrad. So make sure you are checking that before you add your schools to this, okay? In order to make a correction to your FAFSA, it needs to be turned in, it needs to be reviewed, it needs to be processed, and then only after it is processed can you go back and make changes to it. So every time you make a mistake, or you need to add schools, or you chose the wrong school, that just delays it further and further and further from your school actually getting the information they need. Okay. So keep that in mind there, right? Now, right? This is kind of I'm not sure why I had this slide, but uh, I do want to make sure that families can ask questions. Okay, so if you do have questions, make sure to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. If they do kind of fit into kind of what we're talking about at the moment, I'll make sure to answer them. If they aren't, I'll wait until the end and we will have a short Q&A session at the end as well. Okay. All right. So quick takeaways about the whole kind of like financial aid form, right? You need to be patient, right? There's a lot of families that, reach out to me and it's like, oh my God, it's October 2nd and we're already done with the FAFSA, hooray me, right? And I'm like, you just messed up, right? The things you told me that you did on your FAFSA, you just put yourself in a very bad position, right? So it is not about who finishes first. It's about who gets the most money. That's the person that gets the last laugh, right? So it doesn't matter whether you turn it in a day before the deadline or if you turn it on the first day it opens, right? And again, I actually suggest that families don't do it on the first day it opens because the website, it hasn't been checked yet, right? There hasn't been a mass flood into it to see what problems are there. So even for this year, I know it opened on December 1st, but I didn't start doing anything until the second week of December. The reason why I didn't start doing anything until the second week of December is because I wanted everyone else, right? Unfortunately, and if you're one of those people, I'm sorry, right? But I wanted everyone else to go in and break the website to see what they would fix. And then again, I wanted to go in for our families to make sure that those things didn't happen to their situations. Okay. So if you have to take one piece of kind of like gold from this, it's that you do not need to rush. You can wait. Okay. Now, you guys are probably asking, okay, so you had a whole presentation, 30-minute presentation about like the FAFSA. What else? Right? So, right? And you might be thinking, isn't this it? Right? But this is why I say you wish, right? There's so much other things that need to happen. FAFSA is just step one. There's the CSS profile. There's the IDOC system that you have to become a part of, right? There are college-specific financial aid forms, right? Dependent verification forms, income verification forms, signed tax returns, W-2s and 1099s. There's just so much that needs to get done, right? So families that are thinking about doing it on their own, I'm sorry, there's a lot left, and we will be going over those. Hopefully, I can get through all the different systems before the summer comes along. Okay. Now, I show this every month, and it's because I want families to understand what you need to be doing, right? I always say, right? Early bird gets the worm when it comes to your taxes, right? Not necessarily filling out the form, but getting your taxes done so that you can get everything done. Okay. So do not delay, especially class of 2026. You do not want to wait to file your taxes this year. The FAFSA application hopefully will open on October 1st. if you're one of those families that waits until October 15th, this is not that year. Okay. So make sure that you are starting early. Okay. So just looking at the normal timeline, and for families that are like, oh shoot, I was thinking about asking for an extension. This is not the year to do it. Okay. So try to get your taxes done by April 15th. At the very least, you need to get them done before the end of the summer. Okay. Then your student's going to start school in December. Almost everything is going to be done in a normal year, right? Obviously, this year we're not in a normal year, so things are a little bit more drawn out. And then by April 2026, your college decisions will be out. Okay. Now, I know we're still waiting on class of 2025 students and their April decisions, right? But I wanted to make sure that future families also understand what's going on. Okay. So, how can we help? We are here to answer your questions, right? Every single week, right? I have consultations with families, and a lot of it is just answering questions they have, rumors they have heard, right? Things that have happened or like, they've seen happen. Like, how does this, affect my family? So on and so forth. I'm here to answer questions. I love answering questions because the more that I can inform everybody, the more money that we're going to be able to save families. Okay. So, you cannot go into this blind. So I want you guys to set up that consultation with me so that we can make sure that you understand your situation. Again, if I can help you, I'll tell you about our program. And if I cannot, I will make sure that you walk away with some advice. Okay. So please, 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 please make sure to talk to us. Okay. Reach out in whatever way you can. Email, text, Facebook, Discord, wherever. Leave a comment on our training on YouTube, whatever way you can. We will make sure to get back to you. Okay. So I do want to make sure that we open it up for Q&A, and I do see some questions in the Q&A and in the chat. Okay. But if you are interested in talking to us about financial aid, right, in our Financial Aid Edge program, you can either text us at 949-298-6234. You just have to text us one word, text us money, or scan the QR code with your phone, or I'm going to send the link into the chat here, right? Now, if you're interested in our college app intensive, right, or our coaching programs, right? You can go ahead and text that same phone number, 949-298-6234, right? And all you have to text is college, right? Or scan that QR code. I gave you so many opportunities. Don't say I didn't, oh, I didn't get that link. Oh, I never got to sign up for a consultation, right? There's no excuse. Everything's here. Okay. So I'm going to open it up to questions now, right? And then, we'll kind of see where it takes us. All right. So we have a question here, and it says, can we go back to that client resident part? My student is a green card holder. Does that mean she is not eligible for FAFSA? If you are a green card holder, right, a permanent resident in the United States, you are eligible for financial aid. Okay. Now, there's a lot of families that have a misguided notion that applying for financial aid actually lowers your chances of gaining citizenship. That is not the case at all, right? If that was the case, why would they even offer it to permanent residents, right? And I've seen plenty of my families that are on green card status or permanent resident status get their citizenship after getting money from college. So there's nothing to worry about there. Okay. So that's a great question. Okay. Now, obviously, if you are a green card holder, right, there are some complexities, right? So we want to make sure that we understand those. Please sign up for that consultation there. Okay. We have another question. It says, if we have a 529 plan, does it affect getting scholarships? Okay, so we're not going to use the word scholarship. We're going to use the word free money, right? And the answer is it could, right? It all depends on how much is in there, right? And it also depends on how it's held, right? So one of the things that I've said is that the government for financial aid has only done one or two good things ever. And one of them is that they allowed a loophole. And starting 2 years ago, the loophole that they created was that if a student, right, has a 529, but it is held by a grandparent, the grandparent is the custodian, it will not count for financial aid purposes, right? But if a student has a 529 and the parent is the custodian of it, right? What actually happens is, let's say you have $40,000 in your 529. What happens is that the college will look at your 529 and they will say, yummy. And what they will do is they will say, well, the student's probably going to go to college for 4 years. So let me split this into four equal parts. 40,000 divided by four is $10,000. Yum, yum. I get to take $10,000 from that 529 every single year. That's how colleges think about it. So even if they were going to give you $10,000, if you have a 529 worth $40,000, then you just kind of paid for the money that they were going to give to you on your own, right? Colleges don't see that as something that to reward you for because you saved early. Instead, they actually make it something that they use against you in the financial aid process. So again, right, there's a lot of specifics, right? You have a 529 plan. Maybe there's a family trust. Maybe there's this going on or that going on, right? You guys are selling your home this year. Whatever it might be, we're here to help make sure that you guys are on the right track. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, put the links in just one more time. Again, even if you've already talked to us before, I do encourage you guys to, reach out again, talk to us, see, and then see how your situation has changed kind of year after year, right? And then we can tell you how we can help. Okay. We have a question. It says, does a family trust affect aid? Yes, it does, because it's actually considered your asset. It also depends on what kind of trust it's in. If it's in a blind trust and you have no idea what's in it, well then, not so much, right? But if it is a trust that you have created, well, you know what's in it, right? So it's something to kind of it's something specific that we should talk about in a consultation. And so I do kind of recommend that we talk about it there. Okay. We have some questions here, and it says, can you talk about when a private university has a large international student body? Does this somehow affect U.S. citizens receiving institutional aid, need-based? Okay, so the first thing I want to say is that merit-based aid is almost non-existent, right? It is a very small portion of financial aid. I'd probably say less than 1%, right? Now, international students, it actually doesn't affect anything because international students have to sign a piece of paper called a certificate of finance showing that they can basically pay for the first year of college, right? And after they do that, then they pay the full price. So students actually do not, right? Or domestic students, it doesn't matter. It's actually better if there's more international students because they're paying full price, right? Whereas students that are domestic have the chance at getting financial aid, right? We have a follow-up question, I guess, or it's kind of related, right? But merit scholarships, is there a GPA? Merit scholarships don't exist. That's how I want you to think about it, right? Now, very simply, right? I used this example a long time ago. I thought it was getting a little old, so I stopped using it, but I'll use it again, right? So I will use the UCs because a lot of our families are in California, right? Every year, each UC accepts about 10,000 students, right? They send out 10,000 acceptance letters. And do you know how many supposed merit scholarships are available to those 10,000 students, right? I will tell you, it's not 10%, right? It's not 8%. It's not 6%. It's not 2%. It's 50 spots out of 10,000. Your chance to get a merit-based scholarship is 0.5%, right? You have to think that it's not even there. Okay. So keep that in mind. Okay. We have another question that says, does a parent 401k or IRA affect aid, or is it the government mostly looking at cash accounts? So it depends on what type of school you're applying to. Okay. If you're applying to a state school, most likely they're not looking that deep into your retirement accounts, right? And if you're part of our program, I make sure that they don't look that closely into your retirement accounts because parents, tell me if I'm wrong, but your retirement account is yours, right? You raised them for 18 years, you sent them to college. What more do they want, right? They cannot take from your retirement, right? That is my kind of policy, okay? But if you go to private schools, right, they can look at your 401k, they can look at your IRA, right? Now, there are some types of kind of protected assets, right? And so certain things won't be looked at, but in general, can your retirement be looked at? Yes, it can, but there are protected assets as well. Okay. All right, perfect, perfect. So I'm gonna put the link in one more time. Again, don't be shy. I'm a pretty nice guy most of the time, right? It's only when it comes to financial aid and the government not giving us money and things like that that I get a little bit heated and emotional, right? But again, remember, right? There are opportunities for every family, right? If you make over $1 million a year, probably can't help you. But if you're under that threshold, there's probably something I can do for you. Okay. We have a question. If a private university offers merit based on GPA and SAT score, is that a one-time scholarship or is it renewed dependent on their college GPA? So if the college is giving you like a pure merit scholarship, and again, like I said, there's very few of them, but if they are, right, you have to look at the fine print of that or even call the financial aid office and be like, so what's going on with this scholarship? Is it just good for the first year as an incentive, or is it something that renews every single year? Now, generally speaking, every type of free money that is given to a student is GPA dependent, right? So either you need to be making satisfactory academic progress, which is like you need to be getting above like a 2.5 or 2.3, whatever it is, or they might have a higher GPA threshold, right? But it is there, okay? And then final question, right? Should we meet with you in ninth grade? We have a middle schooler now. So I actually have a fourth grader, right? I had a family, right? And they have a junior and they have a third grader. And I said, if you sign up, you will be the youngest family. You'll be a third grader. So if you're in ninth grade, this is a perfect time to talk to me to see how we can save you money. Now, just like with anything else in this world, our prices keep increasing because the cost of everything increases, right? So if you have a ninth grader, it's like, yeah, meet with me now. We'll tell you what we can save you, what we can't do for you, right? And then if you sign up for your program now, it's going to be way cheaper than it is in 3 years, right? So just keep that in mind, okay? And then it says, what is the likely income threshold to get a reduction for tuition for Stanford and other Ivies? So there is no income threshold. I've gotten families that make up to, $750,000 a year, money, right? But the money will vary on the school you're going to and the particular situation, right? There might be a family that makes $750,000 a year, but they also have losses from previous years that brings their income down, right? There might be other situations, right? The 750 might be made in a country where the tax there's not a tax treaty, so like they don't have to report it in the United States, right? There's a lot of different situations that I've dealt with. So even if you're a higher income family, it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most, right? We'll talk. We'll see if there are options for you. And then if there are, I'll tell you about the program. Okay. So I'm going to leave this up here real quick so you guys can do your QR code and texting, right? But it was great meeting with you guys. If you guys do have any other questions, please let me know, right? And I will be posting in Facebook, so that, families, if you guys want the replay, you guys can, have that. And then if there are any questions, again, email, right? And our email has actually changed a little bit, so I want to make sure that you guys have that. So I'm going to put it in the chat here, right? So if you need to reach out to us, our new email is fine aid. Oh, I actually did that wrong. Delete that. How do I delete that? Delete. Okay. Fine aid at eaglelock.com. Okay. So that is our email there. So yeah, me and Coach Tony. So I'm actually one of the head coaches, the head strategists in the coaching program, right? I am also doing financial aid as well because I've done this for such a long time, right? So yes, we are under the same umbrella, right? Eagle Lock, that is our new company name. Financial Aid Secrets is under that, right? So for those that are kind of curious about that, okay? So reach out to us and we'll talk to you guys again soon, okay? All right, everyone have a great night. Northern California families, it's going to start raining tonight. So stay warm, stay dry, and be safe on the roads, okay? I'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye-bye.